Coming up, beyond the Grand Theft World VIP Summit this weekend, I want to get to the breaking news this past week that Israel has officially started a little war with the West Bank. Now, unofficially, they had just been lumping it in with 10-7. You know, there is no Hamas in the West Bank. The West Bank is Palestinian Authority. Hamas only governs Gaza. But now, man, they found some Hamas tunnels in the West Bank, so they're going to have to bomb them all and blow a bunch of stuff up. And it's total self-defense. It has nothing to do with colonizing that area. It has nothing to do with ethnic cleansing the people from the West Bank who have been there since 1948, living kind of in a open-air concentration camp situation. Not as bad as Gaza, but they're still not free. They still don't have their family properties back. They're very constricted on the land, so it's not a good situation historically. And now it's being brought to loggerheads with world events that are ongoing on many fronts. They're opening up Hezbollah in the north. They're trying to fight a war maybe on 6 or 7 fronts at any given time over there. It's the strongest democracy in the Middle East. So we need to learn more about our good ally and how they're self-defending by invading people that had nothing to do with 10-7 just because they can do it and no one's looking because, hey, there's an election going on this season, so they can commit a little more Grand Theft World in their part of the world. So let's go to the kids at Breaking Points and let's find out more about the West Bank invasion.
Ryan, let's move on to the Middle East and the invasion of the West Bank, which is ongoing right now. Tell us what happened.
So last night, the IDF launched what they called Operation Summer Camps, which is an invasion of major parts of the occupied West Bank, focused heavily on Genie, the refugee camp of Genie. So we can put this first element up. Associated Press was reporting that every entry in and out of Genie was being blocked by armored vehicles, and that
which you can see on the screen here.
Yeah, and that the hospitals were, they had blocked access to all hospitals and other medical centers. Their argument was they didn't want to allow people to kind of shelter in hospitals, and so they have said that this is the largest assault. The Israeli army announced that this is the largest assault on the West Bank since 2002 that will involve thousands of service members and will last for days, and they have said it's a preemptive attack on what they said is the buildup of resistance groups in these refugee camps. They just They just did a preemptive attack on Hezbollah. A lot of preemptive attacking going on. The preemptive attacks for decades at this point. At least 9 Palestinians were killed in this attack, which is a number that which pales in comparison to this day the numbers of deaths that you get in Gaza from the ongoing Israeli attacks. You're also having, and we can talk about this later in a bit, an attack on southern Khan Yunis by the IDF, a raid there, which appears to be based on intelligence gleaned from the Bedouin hostage who befriended. This is what we're hearing in the media. By all accounts, it appears to be true that he did. He had a good rapport with some of his captors, and has been debriefing with the IDF continuously since he was released, and that the coincidence of the kind of raid on South Khan Yunis seems to suggest that the IDF believes that they have intel that they can operate on. So we may soon be hearing new, the bodies of hostages being recovered, or more hostage rescues. The way that the Bedouin hostage was rescued, it turns out, was because communications were disabled, because the infrastructure is so completely annihilated in Gaza, that different Hamas operatives lost communication, and basically they weren't able to keep up with people. A number of hostages were recently found suffocated in a tunnel after an IDF bombing, and so there's a huge risk to hostages of the constant shelling and the constant attacks and destruction of the infrastructure, and the inability of of their captors to communicate with each other because they don't want them to die. Like they want to keep them alive. This guy, you don't want to call anybody who went through that 10 months of hell lucky, but lucky in the sense that the tunnel didn't collapse on him and he didn't suffocate. And
and we've heard that from other rescued hostages who said they felt like nobody knew where they were, and there was indiscriminate bombing around them. They didn't have confidence that they were, being protected or safe, and they felt lucky. Basically, that's the implication there, is that we're lucky that we didn't die.
Right.
From our, I don't want to call it friendly fire because it's not exactly the same, but from bombing in Gaza.
Yeah. And what do we have to see too here? Put up this next element. So yeah, this is Channel 14 is like Israel's Newsmax, basically. This is the Army has launched a large-scale military towers in several areas. At the same time, in Channel 14, one of the correspondents there said something like, "Everyone survivor, you're all going to die." Like, if you ever want some blood-curdling stuff, Channel 14 is the place to go. You can put up the third element here in this block. Yes, there it is. Terrorists in northern West Bank. The gates of hell have opened. Either you surrender or you die. Which, okay, some interesting trash talking. Just weird from a journalist. I'm somebody who believes in, putting some passion into your journalism, and it's okay to have a point of view. Just an interesting approach. Just a little weird. The gates of hell have opened. So anyway, Operation Summer Camp, according to Channel 14 in Israel, is the gates of hell opening on the occupied West Bank, which again, to be clear, is not Gaza and is not controlled by Hamas.
Yes, and the Operation Summer Camp with that in juxtaposition to where the communication there is just, it's very, not surprising, but bizarre nonetheless. I'm
putting the fourth element here.
This is the Biden approving humanitarian aid to Gaza via the floating pier, despite warnings from the U.S. government that rough waves could pose significant challenges and objections. This is from Yashar Ali saying an IG report revealed that Biden himself approved this plan. Right.
Which we would have assumed. There's no way that this gets done without Biden. But this IG report has some interesting details that of people arguing logistically. Quote, high waves was what they were calling it. Here we call it a high tide. They're like, look, this isn't going to work. Like, the idea just logistically is dumb. And he's like, no, it's fine. Let's put hundreds of millions of dollars into this. And then separately, the report exposes internal objections, which kind of leaked out into the press at the time, and also were obvious. They were saying, there were people inside the State Department who were saying, this gives Israel an out on actually letting humanitarian aid through the ports of entry that already exist. And if you remember from our reporting on this at the time, this is weird. You're acting like there's some natural disaster around the rest of Gaza.
It's waves.
Where you're unable to just put food and humanitarian aid into trucks and drive it in and distribute it to people. Somehow that has become an impossibility, that what you need to do is build this $500 million pier and then bring it in from Cyprus. But then as soon as they started loading supplies into Cyprus, the IDF was just crawling around Cyprus and doing the exact same thing with their pencil and their clipboard. Being like, oh, what number do you have on this truck here? That number doesn't match what I have. Sorry, back of the line.
Well, we talked.
So if you don't solve the problem, what is one extra port that doesn't even work going to do?
We talked to someone a couple of months ago, I think was in Cyprus at the time that we had that conversation with them about how trucks were being, and that's the United States wanted Israel to accept more trucks. And as a huge backer and funder of the war, if your ally, who's prosecuting this war, won't comply with that, you then spend how much money? What's the total on this pier to get around it? Because they won't let trucks through.
The only extent to which this worked at all is that because of this pier, that's when you had the World Central Kitchen convoy attacked by the IDF and killed. And because they attacked the World Central Kitchen, because people in Washington, D.C. know Jose Andres, that embarrassed Biden enough that he made a phone call to Bibi and said, come on, this is embarrassing. You're killing me here. by killing all of these people. And then all of a sudden, for a couple weeks, more trucks started getting in, proving the case that it was actually Israeli policy. The Israeli kept saying, because if it wasn't, then why could Bibi tweak it and all of a sudden more trucks are getting in? That obviously didn't last long. And the long-term effect of killing the World Central Kitchen humanitarian aid workers was that there were many fewer humanitarian aid workers willing to, for good reason, go out onto the distribution runs, which then led Israel to say, well, it's the United Nations and UNRWA that can't distribute the aid. It's really not our fault. It's their fault. Ignoring the fact that they had killed, more than 100 family and workers of UNRWA, and had led a global campaign to defund them.
But there's some truth that there's some truth to the claims about UNRWA from the Israeli perspective but we've talked about this before, when it's that embedded in such a tiny and concentrated population, that's sort of inevitable. And a big picture thought on this is it's post-World War II. These are all of the tangled, bizarre conversations that we have, and now we have international pressure that you feed civilians of your enemies, which is in the sort of aggregate a good thing and unusual in all of human history. But if you say that you're doing it, you got to do it if you agree to the terms, and if you want to throw international law around like Biden does when it comes to Russia, and then flout it or fail to pressure people into complying with it when you're supplying arms, etc. It's obviously incredibly problematic. Let's put C5 up on the screen. This is a video of the hostage rescue. Yes, and that's actually a Muslim citizen of Israel, 52-year-old man was rescued. You can see the body cam footage from the IDF on the screen here. Like Ryan said, pretty lucky situation, but also worth mentioning that worth mentioning that this has re-upped calls from the family members of other hostages who have not been rescued, of which there are, I think, roughly an estimate of alive 70, something maybe, like 60, yeah. 70 right now. Those families are calling for a ceasefire. So it has put that in a spotlight once again in headlines, that you have the family members, the loved ones of people who are still being held hostage, re-upping their demands for ceasefire, because this was the fourth successful recovery, I think, the fourth successful recovery by the IDF of hostages. But there are a lot of people who have been over there since October 7th, and their families want a ceasefire and they want them back. And that domestically complicates the politics for Netanyahu as well.
Right, it's Wednesday. You could have all of the hostages or an enormous number of the hostages out by the end of this week if they would just agree to the deal that Israel already put forward. Mm-hmm. That's what's so wild about these ongoing negotiations, that Israel put forward a deal, Biden made that deal public, Hamas said this works for us, let's implement this framework, let's do it. And Netanyahu's come back with, well, actually, we want a checkpoint in the Tarim corridor, we want to control the access through Rafah, et cetera. And so we're back to a place where they're deadlocked again.
And yeah, okay, so that's important context to all of this too. That's where we are right now with the potential ceasefire deal, which was the Biden camp was saying was more and more likely as we went through the Democratic Convention week, which I thought was very interesting timing. And now after DNC week is over, maybe these things are not, but my theory at the time was that it was public relations for the Biden campaign to say hey, this is going really, really well. We're doing a great job. We're almost there. And when the week turned to the next week, it became pretty clear that's not what was happening. Right,
and meanwhile, it's been interesting to see kind of Israeli society first mourning a lot of the children that were killed, who were kind of Syrian Arab children in occupied Syria, or calling them Israelis, and then saying they're going to attack Hezbollah over that, when the relationship between those populations and the Israeli government is mostly adversarial otherwise. And then if people want to look up how kind of the Bedouins are treated in settlements that are refused to be kind of recognized legally by the Israeli government, that's just an interesting juxtaposition here, watching this unfold. And as we think about the mass.
Yes, it really is an interesting juxtaposition. If you ask the question, what role does Sykes-Picot have to do with today's Middle East situation? That would be a good college test question. In fact, that would be a good test question for a presidential candidate. What is the influence of the Sykes-Picot Agreement on today's Middle East situation? Because had the French and British not drawn a line through somebody else's territory and then reappropriated their wealth via the Versailles Treaty, then there wouldn't be problems like you see today in that situation. And there are more stories from that ongoing, invasion this past week. We just don't have time in this week's time capsule for that. And likewise, I wanted to give a shout out, point out the dark history of MrBeast's past. This is a video in the past week that I checked out. And also the MrBeast movie documentary. It's an investigation, and it's That Surprise Witness. I guess this says BJ Investigates, so maybe her initials are BJ. But That Surprise Witness we have featured on the show before. She does a really good job of taking her notes, finding footage, and showing a timeline. And the timeline is disconcerting from a variety of levels. First off, you're talking about YouTube's biggest producer, biggest audience, targeting children, teaching them gambling, teaching them a whole bunch of stuff that's not wholesome, moral, or ethical. And then the behind the scenes of how they're running stuff is also not what they portray to the public. And so what's on the box does not match what's in the box. And I could make a Tommy Boy joke there about boxes and guarantees, but I won't do that because those of you who need to know such things already know such things from the Tommy Boy universe. So MrBeast, that situation keeps evolving. It's not evolving in a self-correcting direction. It's kind of evolving out of control. There's a lot of people involved that are kind of sketchy and have histories that are interesting. And so that I'll point you to the references. Even Dog Pack 404 has been using That Surprise Witnesses type of investigations and stuff like that. And also the third in the Whistleblowers video series. I think his name is Dawson. He goes by Dog Pack 404. That video came out this week as well. We do not have time in this time capsule to play such clips for you. So I just wanted to let you know that those are out there. Those stories are still evolving and becoming more understood to people here in present day. And that's all I have to say about that. Also, I just wanted to give a shout out because the gentleman who helped me out this morning with a 5-gallon bucket of water so I could fill my radiator after I did that water pump replacement. Thank you, Victor. And it was very appreciative. And not every hotel will help you out when you ask for something like that. It's kind of outside their purview, but they made it happen. So thank you, Holiday Inn Express. What a crazy past 24 hours it has been. So with all that being said, I'm going to go to LD. We're going to do thank yous. Then I have something very special to play you out, and it's a 5.5-hour documentary series. I think is synthesized all together as one piece. I watched it again this past week. I watched it again this past week. I was watching too much Christopher Walken and Batman 2 today. So that Christopher Walken, he has a very distinct way of speaking. So I watched this Corbett documentary. It's the history, the secret history of Al Qaeda. And I said, I was a little incredulous. And I said, what have I forgotten about the history of Al Qaeda? And I found it to be very enlightening. I have seen it before, and I found that watching it again, I still learned a whole lot that either had slipped my mind or connections I hadn't made. And I thought it would be really beneficial to share with you guys, but it's too much to play all at once. It would almost take an entire episode of Grand Theft World. So we're going to break it in half. We're going to see the first half this week. We'll see the next half at the end of next week's show. Next week is the 200th episode of Grand Theft World. And I would like everyone who's watching, bring a friend. Bring a friend. We're going to have a big party. We're going to have a good time. I will still be on the road. It'll be the day after that giant VIP4 conference that if you guys haven't even checked it out yet, you got to go over to grandtheftworld.com, click till you see the NWO banner, and it would look something like this. No, I clicked the wrong tab. It's not going to load. That's a playlist. We're looking for this. This is what we're looking for. You would click and you go here. You click this, and then it opens up to that page. That's how you get there next Saturday, September 7th at noon, where the New World Order agendas are going to be exposed by all these intellectual, independent producers in the freedom and liberty community. Some of these guys, we're unveiling a whole bunch of R&D tech, right? So there's people that you might know and they produce stuff, and there's other people you're like, what do they do and why are they here? Yeah, they got some secret stuff that they're going to unleash on the freedom community. So there's a whole bunch of cool federations and get-togethers of a voluntary, let's get together, let's hang together before we hang separately type of situation. So anyway, we're going to be doing that VIP 4 this Saturday, September 7th, 2024.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want a write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man.
No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man.